Welcome back, everybody. My name's Dale Hummel, and this is my website, The Timeless Netiv. That is the pathway, the Netiv Olam, the pathway to God. That's what we're here to do, is to learn together what it means to walk with God in this life that we call a journey sometimes. And it's not always an easy journey, is it? Well, I think if we will follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we will find that even in this life, we can have peace, despite our circumstances, hope, and the certainty of eternal life. So join me on this second episode as we continue to walk with Christ. Now, last time we talked about how God cut the first path in the Garden of Eden, how he walked with his creation, and how as they walked together, there was a love relationship between God and the pinnacle of his creation, Adam and Eve. And then come those words in Genesis that God banished his creation from the garden. Those are difficult words to hear, aren't they? And it raises a question, why would God banish his creation that he loves so much from the garden? Creation he cares so deeply for. Well, the Bible tells us that the man and the woman rebelled against God. It says in Genesis that the rebellion occurred when sin slithered its way into the garden. The Bible says that the serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild animals that God created. Now, I know right away we want to ask questions about who was the serpent. Did Satan morph into the serpent? Did Satan use the serpent? And that's for another walk on another day. Right now, the point is evil made its way into the garden. And as a result of that, Adam and Eve were tempted to rebel against God. Now, Adam and Eve, we know from the Hebrew language, were together when Satan approached Eve. So you can't blame her and say she's the reason why humankind fell. If you want to blame anybody, I guess you could blame her husband for not protecting her and not intervening. But the truth and reality is that he presented them a genius temptation. See, what do you mean by that? Well, the serpent asked Eve a question. Did God really say that you can't eat from the fruit of any of the trees of the garden? Now, here's the genius thing. For the first time, he's calling on them to judge God. They've never done that before. To decide whether or not God's being fair and God's being just. So Eve answers, and at first she answers correctly. She says, no, we can eat the fruit of any of the trees of the garden. It's just that tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that God said we're not to eat it, and then she exaggerates, we're not even to touch it. Now, it would have been foolish of her to touch it. But you see what the enemy's doing. He's getting her to focus on what she can't have with the idea that if she had that, she'd be satisfied. Serpent says to her, listen, in the day that you eat that fruit, you are going to be just like God. You won't need him. You'll know good and evil. You'll be in control. And that was just too tempting. So we know what they did. They took that fruit and they ate it. And then right away, they ran and they hid, because for the first time in their lives, they experienced guilt and shame. So, well, what's the difference between guilt and shame? Well, guilt is knowing you did something wrong. Shame is sensing there's something wrong inside. I guess another way to think about it is that guilt is like the symptom and shame is the disease. So they ran and they hid. They not only hid from God, but they hid from each other, and really they hid from themselves. When God finally found them, they came out covered in leaves, protecting their nakedness, which really is more protecting their insecurities now. They blamed each other for what happened. They blamed the serpent. They even blamed God. Adam said, it's the woman you gave me that brought this all about. And so God warned them that if they ever disobeyed him, they would die. Not just physically, but spiritually, they'd be separated from him. And so they were separated, banished from the garden. Can you imagine what that was like as they left? Looking back at the path that they had been following, and now they had to abandon that path. And they left and began to create their own path. And we've been doing that ever since. Because, we're all kind of born with that nature that we want to be God. Anybody who's ever had a child raised a 2-year-old knows that if they could, they'd rule the house. You've also probably noticed that our kids are born with an innate sense of, it's not my fault. It's the parents' fault, it's the siblings' fault, it's the dog's fault, the cat's fault. Now comes that sinful nature that we've inherited from our first parents. So what do? We try to create our own path in life. We pursue a path of achievement, thinking that if I can just be successful enough, then I'll be satisfied, then I'll be happy, and everything will work out. And temporarily that seems to work, and then eventually we realize that all the success in the world does not satisfy the gnawing of our soul. Or we decide, you know what, I'm going to pursue the pathway of pleasure. As long as I keep my feelings entertained and try to satisfy my desires, then everything will be okay. And so we pursue all kinds of pleasure, sexual pleasure, material pleasure. And in the end, it just leaves us empty again. Some people even pursue religious paths. If I just dot the I's, cross the T's, if I just go through the rituals, the traditions, if I am just better than the next person, certainly God will accept me. If I'm just good enough, then everything is going to be okay. But all those paths eventually lead us to frustration, lead us to emptiness. None of us can achieve enough. None of us can have enough pleasure. None of us can be religious enough to ever bring us to a place of ultimate satisfaction. So what do? There's nothing we can do. The question is, what does God do? And God, because of his love, and because he knew this day would come, had already purposed in his heart that he would come looking for us. And so God, in a sense, leaves the garden and pursues us. And the way he does that is he comes in human form, in the form of his son, Jesus Christ. And while the gate to the garden was closed, God opens a new pathway. God cuts a new path, so to speak. It's a path that leads us to a symbol that I found on this trail the first time I walked it, and it's become so meaningful to me. And I think it'll be meaningful to you as well. It is that symbol of the cross where Jesus came and he died for us. There's a church nearby that put up this cross on the path. And as you can see, it's a place where you can come and sit and meditate, think about yourself, you think about your life, think about God, and think about the hope that he alone brings. And this is where I plan to meet you on our next weekly walk together, at the cross, at this place where God meets us and forgives us and gives us an opportunity for a new life. I look forward to seeing you on the next Timeless Netiv walk as we encounter God's love once again for you and for me. In the meantime, ask yourself, have you strayed from the path of a relationship with him? Have you fallen into that temptation of thinking that things or pleasure or even religion will satisfy your life? If you have, maybe spend some time at the cross. Ask God to forgive you. Ask him to help you recover that sense of peace that only he can give. I'll see you next time here at the cross.